Hello guys, welcome to Improve 10x. Today we are going to discuss about Android application development. This video will help you in understanding how to build an application, whether it is Android application or a web application or any technology. We are not just going to focus on the output, we are going to focus more on the understanding of the concept. We are going to focus more on the design, how we can actually implement this application in a better way so that it can be used for longer period. The code becomes more maintainable. And we are going to use a lot of best practices which will help us improve our code quality. We are going to use Java programming language for app development, and we are going to use Android Studio for writing the code, IDE, and we are going to use a simple library which is called Picasso to load images from internet. And during this application development, we are not going to use like advanced libraries such as Dagger, view binding, data binding, coroutines. We are not going to use like advanced features. We are going to understand the logic using the simple Android application development. So let's get started. First, we'll try to understand what is the app that we are going to build. We are going to build a simple meme generator where you have an image and then you have a top text and you have a bottom text. You can see it here. Error in line 62, but I have only 40 lines. So there are a lot of such memes which actually get circulated on social media. So now we will build an application where we can actually create our own memes. There is a website which provides us an API through which we can generate memes. Here you can see. On that website, you can just select the template name, which is error 404, and then you can have to give the top text, bottom text, and the image link is automatically generated. You can see the image on the right side. Now we are going to use the same method in an Android application. Now let us see how our app actually looked like. See here. So we have three text boxes where you can enter the details like template name, top text, bottom text. And once you click on the generate meme button, it will generate the image and it will show you at the bottom. So this is what we are going to build as a simple application. Let us try to understand what are the components that are available. As we already discussed about object-oriented programming, like everything that we see or everything that we use, we can consider it as an object. Similarly, to build this screen, we are going to use multiple objects. If you see, these are only for information purpose. For these kind of things, Android provides some objects which are called as text views. So this is a class for which we can create an object and we can use them. Similarly, we have other components where we can enter the text. If you see the text boxes where we can enter the text, those are actually called as edit text. So which means you can actually modify the text inside this box. And we have one more component which is button. So whenever you click on the button, you should be able to do certain things. So we are going to build this UI and then we are going to implement the functionality. So let's get started with creating the design. And these are the different screens which you can start your application with. Since I don't have any advanced usage, I'm just going to start with a simple empty views activity. I'm going to give my project name as meme generator. I'm using Java and then start. Let the application build for the first time. Now, when the application is created, you can see two files which are main activity.java and activity_main.xml. So these are the two files where we are going to start writing the code. If you see the XML file, this is a design where we are going to create how it should look like. And when we go to Java functionality, so this is where we are going to write the business logic and what should be done and how to handle the actions and everything. So the behavior will be in the Java and the UI will be on the XML. So let's get started with the XML first. Let's create the UI. If you see on the left side, we have palette where we have like all these components, text view, button, image view, recycler view and all. And there are a lot of such components. So here, first we are going to get all the components that we wanted to use. Yes, I have got all the components that are required. Now I need to change the text that is being displayed. So we can just go on to the attributes on the right side, select the item, and then you can modify the text. First one is template name. And the second one, we don't want anything to show by default. So with this, we have created the components. Now we need to make them how it looks in the application. I wanted some padding on all the sides of the screen. So I'm going to just select the common layout. Here in the component tree, select the parent layout for which you can apply the padding or margin. I'm going to apply padding, which is 16 dB. So usually in web applications, we call it as pixels, but here in Android, we call it as dB, which means density independent pixels. This will help you in making sure number will work in all different sizes of devices. It will work with different resolutions as well. We need to align all these things. Now I'm going to select all these components and then align them to the left side. Align, we can call them as left edges. Automatically everything is aligned left. Now I wanted everything to be one after the other. So I'm going to create a chain for this. Create vertical chain. Automatically it created the chain and it has distributed the space from top to bottom. But we don't want the button to be at bottom. So I'm just removing this connection. Now you can see everything is one after the other. The next thing that we need to do is we want all these things to be starting from the left. So I'm just connecting the top one with the left. Automatically everything has moved. Now we want the button to be in the center. So I'm just connecting the right to the right side of the parent. Automatically the space is being distributed. I wanted these text boxes to be filled from left to right completely. Left side we have already filled it. So on the right side, what I can do is drag it individually like this. I need to add the spacing for all the components. So I'm just selecting all the components, searching for an attribute which is margin top. I'm going to give 8 dB, which means approximately 8 pixels. So now we have some spacing also. It looks similar to our application or design. We also need an image view at the bottom where we can actually show the preview image, right? For that, we are going to use a component called image view. I can use some dummy image. And we need to keep this image filled from left to right. So I'm just connecting all the points. And the image should come below the button. So when you give a 0 dB as width or height, whatever the space is available, it will just take that space. You can see that the image has taken the available space now. I'm going to give some margin for image also. And we are done with the UI now. Let's go and start discussing about the functionality. Now, let us see what a user can actually do on this particular screen. What are the different actions that a user can perform on this screen? If you see, first one, user should be able to click on the button so that he can see the data, right? And to see the image, we should be able to have a method which says show image. And where are we getting this URL? This should be generated when you actually click on the button. So we will see like how we can actually build this URL and what are the requirements for these buttons. Let's start with these two methods first, and then we'll go into D. Like whenever we are implementing one method, then only we will write code which is really necessary at that point of time. This will make it easy for you to actually understand why we are writing any line of code. So I'm going into main activity. Here you can already see there is a method which is called onCreate. And here we are linking with the XML, which is activity underscore main. So this is how we are actually linking the Java code as well as the design code. The first one we wanted to do was handle generate click. So I'm going to create a method for that. I'm going to create this method. Now let us discuss what this method is actually going to do. This method should actually handle the listener for the button. Whenever you click on a button, we should be able to show something. So let us try that. First of all, if I wanted to handle a button click, I need a button object, right? Should I create a new button now? Let's see. We have a button class, yes. And let's call it as generate button. Are we going to create something like this? If you actually observe, we are not going to create a button object right now. It is already created. It is there in the XML. So we just need to find a reference to that button. In order to do that, the button should have some ID. And if you see in the attributes, there is a variable called ID. In the ID, we can give our own ID for this button. Let's call it as generate BTN, which BTN is shortcut for button. Now let us go into main activity. And how are we going to get the reference of that button? Android actually provides a method which says find view by ID, and then we can provide a resource ID, which will be denoted as r.id.generate button. Now, this is how we are going to get the generate button object. And using this object, you can modify like properties of the button also. If you see generate button dot set text, this line will change the text of that button into OK. Similarly, there are many other methods which you can call. As we already discussed, object is nothing but a set of properties and behavior, right? So these text and styles and all these are properties only. You can modify those properties using this button. Now, similarly, we are going to use a method which is called set on click listener. So whenever you click on something, we wanted to handle that behavior, right? So that is the reason we are calling this method. And inside this method, it is expecting an object of on click listener. On click listener is an interface. So how are we going to create an object for that interface? Either you can implement that interface in the current class, or you can create an anonymous object also. So I'm going to create an anonymous object. Right, that's it. So now whenever you click on that button, line number 23 will get executed. To see whether it is working or not, I wanted to show a message on the screen. For that, we can use something called toast message. Toast, make text. We need to pass the activity, comma, whatever is the message, generate button, clicked. And whether you wanted to show it for long period or short period. There are constant values for that. Length long and length short. Let me use length short. And finally, I can call a method called show. Now let me see if this button functionality is actually working or not. Now let me run the application. Yes, I can see the application now. And let me click on the button. Yes, I can click. I'm able to see the toast message. Let's get back to the code. Now, what do we wanted to do when we actually click on that button? We wanted to show an image on the URL, right? So for that, we need to implement another method, which is show image. So let me just add a to do here. Need to show image as preview. Let's get started with the next method, which is show image. So now we wanted to show this particular image URL. We are accepting an image URL as a method input. And once we get this image URL, we wanted to show it on the image view. In order to show it on image view, we need an image view object, right? So let me create an image view object. Again, we are not going to create a new object here. We are going to just get the existing object from the design. Did we give ID for image view? We haven't. So let me go to the XML and we'll give an ID for this component. I'm calling it as preview ing. Done. Let me go back and now I'll use preview ing here. Yes, I have got the image. How am I going to show this image on the image view? This image is actually coming from the internet. In Android, we cannot show remote image directly. So in order to show that image, we need a library. And the library is called as Picasso. Let's try to get that library. I'm searching for Picasso Android. Opening the Picasso library. So here you can see the code, how we are going to show the image. In order to use this library, we have to include this library into our application. Let's scroll down and see how we can add this library to the project. Here you can see a line under Gradle. So Gradle is a build system which we are using in Android. We have to add libraries using this Gradle build system. So I'm just copying this line. Let me see where the Gradle file is. You can see Gradle scripts. And here you can find app Gradle script. Open that At the bottom, you can see some implementations here. So I'm adding the Picasso library here. And now we should be able to use the Picasso library. So this was the line which we saw on the documentation. We have to use the Picasso class. Let me try to import it. Yes. And we are using a get method to get a Picasso object. Then we are calling load method in which we have to pass a URL or URL. Here getting the image URL, right? So let me pass image URL. And after that we have to pass the image view object, which is preview image. So if you understand these concepts, like which one we are calling and how do we pass an input or how do we get an output, that makes it easier for us to implement the functionality. Now, if we call this with image view, it should be able to show the data. So let us just check it once, if it is working or not. I'm going to call show image with some dummy image URL. So I'm just giving some dummy URL. Okay. Now, in order to show this image, we need an internet permission, right? So in Android, we have a file which is called manifest. In Android manifest, we can handle all the permissions, whatever the permissions that we are looking for. So just go here and we can add users permission. And then we can search for internet and give it. Now let's run the application and see if the image is actually coming or not. Yes, I can see the image, right? So the image is also working. Now let me remove this default image one. The method is working. We will use it later. Now we need to identify what we have to do when you click on that button. This is the main functionality, right? So let's try to understand like what we have to do when you click on that button now. This is the point where we have to write our core logic, the business logic. So whenever you click on a button, we need to generate a URL using URL format which we already have. And if you see, we have three parameters which are template, top text and bottom text. In order to generate this URL, you need these three things. How are we going to get the template? We need another method which says get template text. Similarly for top text and bottom text. And then we can use show image URL by passing the generated URL. This will help us in building the entire application. So let's start building one by one. Let me create a method. And it needs three parameters. And we are going to get a string from this URL. So I'm going to return a string. And how are we going to get this URL? So let me just copy paste the URL and then we'll change the values. So in place of error plus 404, I'm going to use template. In place of top text, I'm going to use top text. Similarly for bottom text. Done. We have generated this URL. Now, how are we going to call this method? If we call this method and if we pass the generated URL into show image, we can see the image. So let me call this method from onClick method. Generate meme URL. And we need three variables. From where are we going to get these values? Template. So instead of writing it as a variable, we have already seen the depending methods, right? Let's create these methods. Get template text. They should return as the entered value. Similarly for get top text. Get. Now let's create methods one by one. Done. We have these three methods. So here we have to do some implementation. And now if you see, the logic is we just need to build this URL, meme URL. Let's call it as meme URL. And once the URL is ready, you can call show image and pass this meme URL. And with this, you can see there are only two lines. We are generating the URL and we are calling a show method. That's it. Now, the next part is we need to fill the functionality for these things. So let's start with the first one, which is get template text. How are we going to implement get template text? If you see in the UI, we have a component which is edit text. If we can get the object of that edit text, we can simply call .get text, and that will give us the text value. So let's try to create a edit text object here first. Edit text. Let's call it as template txt, and we have to use the method which is find view by id, r.id. But we haven't gave any id for this component, right? So let me go to the design, select this component and give an id for this. Template name txt. Done. I'm using the same template name txt here. And after that, if you use this object, you can see the methods dot get text, which is giving you an editable object. And if you convert that to string, this is the parameter that is entered in the edit text. I can just simply return this value. This will give the value which is there in that edit text. Similarly for get top text. Same for bottom text as well. Now if you see, we have focused on implementing on one method at a time. And finally, our functionality is almost completed. Shall we see if this is working? Let me run the application. Now the application is running. Let's try to test it. First one, we have to pass error 404. Top text, let's send it as error in line 62. In the bottom text, I'm going to pass. Now let's click on the button and see if it works. Yes, it worked. It showed an image with the top text and bottom text. Now let us see if it works without bottom text. Yes, it worked only with the top text also. It is working perfectly fine. No issues at all. Now let's try to do some cleanup and make it more efficient. If you see here in onCreate, do we have any problem? It is very simple, less number of lines and easy to understand also. So no issues. And in handle generate click, there is a gray color here. If you see in Java, we have lambda functions. So if you use lambda functions, it will reduce the number of lines of code. So let's try to use that lambda function for this. You can see now here, these are the two lines which will get executed when you click on it. And we have these methods which are bottom text, top text and get template text. Whenever you click on the button, it is coming to these methods and it is getting the object from the design every time. Instead of that, we can actually make an improvement. We will divide that into declaration and assignment first, all the three. Now we'll keep these declarations at the top so that the state can be persisted. We don't need to get the object every time. And since these are internal variables, we can just keep them as private. Now, just declaring these variables at the top doesn't help us. We have to move these lines, which is find view by IDs. These lines should be executed only once on the screen. Like whenever you click on the button, if the object is already available, you should be able to use that. So instead of keeping it all here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new method, init views, where I can just initialize all these views at once. I'll just copy paste the find view by IDs here. Now we have done the cleanup. The code looks pretty simple and easy to understand. Similarly, in show image also, there is an image view object which we are trying to get. And even this will be called every time when you call the show image method. So I'm going to do a cleanup on this as well. Done. Now, you might ask, should we actually move this button find view by ID also into init views? But if you see here, this method is being called only once in the screen and whenever the activity is being created. So in that case, you don't need to call this multiple times. It is not getting called every time. So whether do we need to keep it inside init views or can we just use it locally here? It is up to us. the best practice is better use an object only when it is necessary. So here if you see, this object is necessary only in this method and this is being called only once. So let's keep this object here itself. Now we have made all the changes. Let us see if everything is working fine again. So let me call error 404 and I'm just generating the menu. Yes, it worked with top text. I'll just write some bottom text. Let's see if it works. Yes, it is working. So all the changes are working fine, absolutely. Now, if you see, there are certain challenges which we can see here. One is the template name, you should be able to remember it, which is not that easy. And we don't even know what all template names that we have. So instead of keeping it as a text box, we can actually put it as a dropdown where you can select it. Let's try to make that change. So in order to use this dropdown, we have to use a component called spinner. And the spinner needs a list of elements or array of elements. Since the number of items are very high, I'm going to create a string array inside a resources. So here you can see the resources folder res. Inside that we have values and you can see strings.xml. So here you can actually declare the data. I'm going to just copy paste a string array here. And this is a format for the string array. You can just declare a name with string array and then you can give all the items. So here we have like nearly 1,000 items for the templates. So I'm going back. Now, what all changes that I need to make in order to make this template name as spinner? So first one, instead of edit text, I need a spinner. Spinner is a component for Android dropdown. So let me start doing that. We are going to do very minimal changes and with the minimal changes, we should be able to get it. Let's get into the XML. So before removing the edit text, we will just try to add the spinner and see if it is working and then we will remove our edit text. Here in the containers, you can see the spinner object. So I'm just dragging a spinner object here. I'm just setting all the properties that are required. ID as template sp. Now we have added a spinner. How are we going to show the data to the spinner? When should we show the data on the spinner? Is it when you click on the button or is it when you open the application? So just try to understand when exactly we have to do and then we can find the appropriate method. Whenever you open the application, we expect the template names to be visible, right? So we wanted to do it directly in the onCreate. I'm going to create a method which says setup spinner. Now, first we need a spinner object, right? So I'm going to create a spinner object. So spinner uses something called adapter, which will actually show you the views. So I'm going to create an adapter. We have something called array adapter, which uses the data type string. I'm going to create an object for that. New array adapter. First one is context, which means the current activity instance. And then we need to show how it should look like. There are certain default resources. We can use them. We can call using android.r.layout. Simple list item 1. There are different constructors. If you see, if you want to have custom XML, you can use the second one where you can pass a view ID also. And now the third one where we are actually passing the string data. If the data is already available, we can pass the data while creating the array adapter object itself. So let's try to use that. In order to pass the data, we need a array, right? So I'm going to declare a string array, template names, and we need to get it from the string XML, right? Get, you can see get resources, which will give you a string array. You need to pass the string array ID. And since it is an array, we can use a resources ID, which is r.array.templates. So templates is the name that we have given. And we can pass this into the adapter name. Template names. Done. Now we have got the data and we have passed it to adapter. Now we need to pass adapter to the spinner. So for that we can use spinner object dot set adapter. We can pass the adapter. Done. Setup adapter is completed. Is there any other method that we need to make the changes? Init view doesn't have any change. Handle generate click doesn't have any change. But when you see here, get template text. Here, instead of getting it from the template text box, we have to get it from the spinner now. So instead of this, I need a spinner object. But I don't have spinner object. It is a local variable, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do some cleanup where I'm just splitting the declaration. Declare this object at the top. And then initialization inside the init views. Now I should be able to use it inside the get template text method. Let us see. Templates sp, yes, dot get selected item. So here we are getting a selected item dot toString. Since the selected item is an object, we are just converting it into a string and we are using it now. Since we have completed our functionality, I'm going to delete this. Done. We have made the changes. Since we have removed this edit text, we have to remove the related code as well, right? So let me delete the unnecessary code now. We don't have template txt. That's it. So let me just run the application and see. Yes, now you can see a drop down here and you can see all the values. So let me select another one. I'm going to give some dummy text. Let us see if it works. Yes, it worked. If I change the template name, let's see if it will work again. Yes, it is working. I can select any template now. So this is how we can make changes like one step at a time, understand the logic and try to see where exactly we have to make the changes. And whenever there is necessity, then only create objects or like make a refactoring and all. If you follow all these principles, our code looks much cleaner and it will be easy to maintain also. Now, let us try to see that if we are implementing another version of this application. We wanted to move the image into the next screen. Here you can see the first screen has all the data details. When you click on the button, it should generate the URL and then it should go to the next screen to show the preview so that you can actually see the image bigger. Shall we try to modify our application to support this? So first, let's try to understand what are the changes that we need to do. Is there any changes in the first screen UI? Yes, there is only one change, which is we have to remove the image view. We have to remove the functionality which is related with the image view. On the second screen, we are going to just move the functionality of image view from first screen to the second screen. And how are we going to get this URL? This is something that we are going to transfer the data from first screen to second screen. Shall we try this? So let's get started with the second screen. Let us call it as meme activity. So in order to create a new activity, I'm just going into the Java, creating a new activity, empty views activity, and I'm going to create meme activity. It is creating a XML file also. You can see here. I'll just go to the main XML, copy the image view and paste it in the meme activity XML. Yes, we have created the image view and there is also image view ID, which is preview image. We are done with the XML. Let's close the XML. Let's go into the meme activity. So what are we going to do inside the meme activity? We are expecting that there should be an image URL which will come into this particular screen. Let's call it as string image URL. We don't know from where this is coming. We will discuss that. And here what we have to do, we have to show the image URL, right? So can I just copy paste the show method here? Since this is like very independent to that particular functionality, I'm just removing it from here and keeping it inside the meme activity. And I'm calling the method show image. And it also needs a preview image object. Since this method will be called only once, I can actually create it here itself. Find view by id, r.id. Done. Now I whenever I come to this screen, I'm calling a show image method and we are passing an image URL. And then it is displaying the image using the Picasso library. But from where are we getting this image URL? This is a key point. So let's go to main activity. There are certain errors which we will try to remove. So whenever you click on the button, we are generating the URL, but we are not going to show it. We have to send the URL next screen. We have to send the URL to the next screen. And how are we going to do that? In Android, we have a concept called intent, which will actually move from one screen to other screen, which will help in transferring the data as well. So we are going to create an object of intent. And you can pass like from where you are actually going, the current context, which is this, and where are we going exactly, the target screen, which will be meme activity.class. So this is how we have created the intent. And this intent has the source location and destination location, but it still doesn't have the data. We need to add the data. For that, let us use a method called set. We have a method called put extra, where you can pass key value pair. So I'm going to call it as URL. I'm passing the generated URL, which is meme URL. Now the intent object is created. We have to call a method which is called start activity, which will accept the intent object. So just call using this. Done. So here we are actually sending the data. On the next screen, how are we going to get the data that is passed to this screen? So this is where we are going to use something called, we are getting an image URL. So I'm just using that string. We have a method called get intent, and then you can use get string extra, and you can pass the same thing, which is URL. Done. This will give you a string object, and you can use that object and you can display it on your screen. I'm using this image URL only at one place, so I don't need this to be at a global level. So I'm just changing it to local. So the variable is created here. I'm calling the show image. Yes. Now we don't need this image view also. So I'm going to delete the unnecessary code. Cleanup is very essential, guys. This will help you in making your code look better and maintainable. Now let us run the application and see if it works. Now, yes, the image from the home screen has been removed. Let me select something. Top text. Bottom text. Click on generate new. Yes, it went to the next screen and then it showed the image. Again, you can come back. You can select a different template. Click on the generate and you should be able to see them. Similarly, you can implement additional functionalities like sharing this image onto WhatsApp or any other social media. Just sharing this image URL, that is enough. And let's try to do some more cleanup. So if you see here, there is a string which is hard-coded. Instead of hard-coding it, let's create it as a constant, so that the memory location will be constant, and at both the places like source and destination, we'll be using the same constant variable. There won't be any mismatch. Since this method, this variable will be used across multiple activities, I'm going to keep it as default. Static final string URL extra is equal to, I'm just going to keep it as URL, and instead of this URL, I'm going to use URL extra. Similarly, at main activity also, I can directly use URL extra. Done. So this makes our code much better and cleaner. And after every change, try to run the application and see if everything is working fine or not. So this way, if you focus more on the design and try to implement your application, like we will be able to understand what exactly is happening. Instead of just writing all the code at once and then running the application, try to understand each logic and follow step-by-step procedure. So using this approach, we can actually understand the logic, like where exactly we have to write the code and what is happening at each and every method. And we are trying to keep the methods very small, and every method has its own independent functionality. We have used a lot of best practices. We have used constants. We try to keep our code simple and make it easy for other people to understand. That's it for today, guys. So I hope you have learned about basic Android application development. So whatever we have learned today, the same concepts can be applied across any technology, guys. This is not only specific to Android. Just we need to know like which objects or which classes we have to use and which methods we have to use. And once you get to know that, you have to identify whether you have to create the object by yourself or you have to get it from somewhere else. And if you have to get it from somewhere, then how are we going to get it? What are the parameters that we need to pass for? So if we understand these logics, we can make any kind of complicated application into much simpler way in terms of design. It becomes more maintainable. People can easily modify the changes, and complicated features also can be implemented in a much faster way. If you like the content, please like the video. And for more interesting videos, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.